What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about the dark origin of Nintendo. Nintendo is now known as the company that makes awesome games for all ages. Inventors of the now legendary Mario, the people who introduced millions to adventure by traveling dungeons with Link, and showing us addictive puzzles by bringing Tetris to the world. People forget that they started as a card company, and most people who do know don't know anything about these cards. Well, this story begins back in 1633. Japan outlawed playing cards in an attempt to lock down on rampant illegal gambling. For 250 years, travelers would introduce new card games to Japan only to have the government ban them. Throughout this entire period, one card game was always the most popular in gambling dens. Hanafuda, a game played with a 48 card deck. Each card had different Chinese art, showing warriors, armor, and dragons. The rules were very complex and tightly based on what each card represented. This provided both a problem and a solution to the constant banning. Each time the government would find the latest version of the cards and outlaw it, they could simply invent a new deck with totally different symbols and art on the cards, thus making it undetectable to the lawkeepers who would stumble upon the latest deck. For 250 years, this game of cat and mouse was played. The lawmakers would try and crush it, and the common people would try and bring it back. In 1886, the countrywide ban was finally abolished. If the people wanted card games they would have. The Yakuza had already been running most of the underground gambling dens, and now that it was legal, they could just open legitimate hanafuda parlors. For those who don't know, the Yakuza are sort of the mafia of Japan. They're considered a higher class kind of gangster, and they actually open legitimate businesses whenever popular, but they also extort people. The word Yakuza itself translates to useless individual, and it was originally used to intend someone who had lost a hand of hanafuda. This is the dawn of Nintendo. In 1889, a 30-year-old Fushiro Yamuchi saw an opportunity. He'd always been a player of hanafuda and really enjoyed it, so he decided to begin creating decks himself to sell to all these new parlors that were opening up. He opened his first shop in a district owned by the Ezutakusai, one of Kyoto's oldest and most powerful Yakuza groups. To say that he was making these cards to sell to gangsters would be a bit of an exaggeration. Truly, I believe that Yamuchi had a passion for the art of the cards themselves, and for the skill and technique of playing hanafuda. But it's hard to deny that his biggest buyers were probably part of the Ezutakusai. Even the founder of this Yakuza family, Kotetsu Azu, was a famous gambler and swordsman, which explains the heavy influence of gambling parlors in all the areas they controlled. Fasejiro Yamuchi was a skilled craftsman, but now he just needed a name to fit his business. Nin Tin Do. The name that would rattle millions of controllers, that would see fortunes change hand, a name that echoes with power to this very day. It's commonly held that Nintendo translates to leave luck to heaven, or leave one's fortune in the hands of fate. Strongly considered to be kind of a gambler's mantra. Jake Adelstein, when doing research for his book Tokyo Vice, interviewed current members of the Yakuza on what they thought of the Nintendo name. It is commonly thought that Nin is from Ninko, meaning chivalry. The Yakuza have always labeled themselves as a chivalrous organization. Do is meaning shrine or sanctuary, and is often added to titles in Japan to make it seem more honorable. Tin in Nintendo is made of the same kanji character as the mythical being Tengu, a demon with a large nose and a penchant for evil doings. This may just be an urban legend of the underworld, but it's said to this day that Nintendo's name is showing thanks to the customer base that got them going. The years passed and Nintendo grew. Yamuchi took on apprentices and taught them how his cards were made, eventually even opening more shops. By the 1960s, they had machines that would press and make these cards, but the machines required very careful tuning. They hired employees to handle the delicate task of maintaining the balance of this machinery, one of who was Gunpei Yokoi. Does that name sound familiar? Well, it should, because he's the inventor of the Game Boy, and also the Virtual Boy, but we'll forgive that. When Yokoi worked on the machine, he said if they created even the smallest error, the local Yakuza would come in extremely pissed. Damaged hanafuda cards would leave marks on the outside, and a careful gambler with sharp eyes could end up taking home a lot of money after a long night of gambling, watching for one card and being able to track it so he could rig hands. During World War II, many citizens had a choice: join the military or help in military factories. Hiroshi Yamuchi worked in one of these factories, even though the Nintendo family was one of the upper wealthy class. Completing high school and going off to study law at the prestigious Waseda University taught him a lot about life. Hiroshi's grandfather, then CEO of Nintendo, saw an opportunity for growth. He could create Western-style playing cards for all the American soldiers stationed in Japan. This helped Nintendo out of a slump it was sinking into at the time. The young Hiroshi, now done with school, was called back to the stone, 3-story headquarters of Nintendo. His grandfather was dying, and he was chosen as the new head of the company. Seeing how well the American playing cards were selling, he realized fresh ideas are what this company needed most. He started by licensing Disney cards, while at the same time marketing a separate adult set of cards with naked women on them. They even printed the famous Marilyn Monroe centerfold. Yes, that's right, the company that now makes Pokemon once printed cards of a naked Marilyn Monroe. As the new head of Nintendo, he really wanted to branch out into many new directions and see what stuck. Almost all of these were complete failures. Noodle soups, ballpoint pens, copy machines, even their own ripoff of Lego called N and B blocks. These failures caused the company a lot financially, but with each loss, Hiroshi learned another powerful lesson. He did not make mistakes twice, so with each problem they stumbled upon, he knew how to grow the company in a new direction. When the 1960s came around, Nintendo opened its own taxi company. Daya, meaning diamond, began serving the area. This helped feed Hiroshi's other investment at the time, a love motel. Love motels were extremely hot in the 60s and 70s. Adults could go, rent a room for a few hours, have some polite anonymous sex with a stranger, and quietly leave. Coupled with the taxi company, this was a good way to get people to the love motels and home, even if they didn't have cars or prefer not to drive their own. These love hotels would typically furnish their own women of the night, or prostitutes, however you want to phrase it, and you'd get a discount if you brought your own lovely lady of the night. Or, a legitimate girlfriend. Funny enough, the local newspapers would write about how nice his love motel was, and how no one seemed to enjoy it more than his biggest customer, Hiroshi himself. The company eventually closed the love motels and began experimenting with toys, and eventually moved into video games, and of course now we have the Nintendo we know and love today. They've made toys, made soup, ran a sex motel, helped the Yakuza start many profitable gambling dens, and now they take us on adventures in video games. If you're interested in any of this history, my primary sources for this video were Tokyo Vice by Jay Adelstein, Game Over by David Sheff, and The History of Nintendo 1889 to 1980 by Florent Georges and Raphael Morlaine. If you liked this video, share it with your Nintendo friends, post it on Reddit, put it on forums, do whatever you want to do. But thanks so much for watching. Do me a big favor and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, maybe check out my last video. Please subscribe, and if you want, share this somewhere with your friends. Throughout this entire period, one card game was always the most popular in gambling. Seriously? He opened his first shop in a district owned by the Azuko Tetsusaki. Azuko Tetsukai.